Hi, this is Tony Cottee, and you're listening to the We Are West Ham podcast.
You are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast for the last time in 2020, officially the worst year in the history of the human race. But never mind, because the We Are West Ham podcast has been here throughout. Happy Christmas, everyone. We hope you had a good one. Unless, like us three, you had to stay in on your own, staring at the ceiling because Boris Johnson and Matt Hancock decided to change everyone's plans and plunge Essex, London and most of the southeast into Tier 4 just a few days before Christmas. But we all three of us, me, Will Pugh, James Jones and Tom Edwards, hope you had a brilliant break, or certainly the best possible Christmas that you could have. It's been an absolutely brilliant year for the We Are West Ham podcast. Tens and tens and tens of brilliant guests, former players, established journalists. The listeners have gone up. We've interacted with you guys, the listeners, week in, week out, which we've absolutely loved. And all in all, it's been a resounding success, a bit of a tumultuous year. Me and James started the year recording the West Ham show live on Love Sport Radio every Tuesday night in a studio in Southwark, and we've finished it sitting in our bedrooms looking at each other on a little screen and recording it over Zoom. But you lot at home have stayed with us for week in, week out, month in, month out. You're obviously telling your friends, like we tell you to every week as the listeners are going up. It's been a great year as far as the podcast is concerned, and brilliantly West Ham have finished it in better shape than they started. James, Tom, great to be joined by the two of you again for the last time this year. I don't mean to give away the broadcasting secrets, but we're not exactly sure where West Ham are going to be sitting in the table by the time this podcast goes out, because we're recording it just a few days before Christmas. But Jones, what a great year. What a crazy year in life in general, but a good year for the We Are West Ham team. We've had a rebrand, a new member join, an old host leave. It's been a pretty roller coaster, but it's been me and you from the off.
Yeah, we've been the mainstays, but yeah, you're right. I think it's been a strange year, both on and off the pod. Won't go too much into coronavirus and all that. I'm sure we'll touch on that when we later on in the podcast. But loads happening on the We Are West Ham show. Obviously, you mentioned the rebrand, the switch from live radio to Zoom, and launching the YouTube channel, and all the stuff that comes with that. Obviously, Charlie sticking with us after lockdown, and then moving on, and then Tom coming back and signing for us full time. It's been lots going on, but a really, really fantastic year. And then on the pitch, started well, then got really, really rubbish, and then seems to have ended pretty well as well. Obviously, I can't speak for the last few games of the season because we've not had those yet, of the year, shall I say. But it's been a lot better the back end of this year than it has been at the beginning, on the pitch at least. So, here's to a less dramatic 2021, let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Tom, me and Jonesy have had 12 months with each other. We've had in excess of 12 months with each other, actually, but we just don't get to sit about 2 yards away from each other in that pokey little studio in Southwark anymore. And those Tuesday evenings, as much as trudging through South London or Central London on rainy, cold Tuesday evenings to meet Jonesy for a beer in the pub just on the Thames beforehand. At the time, it used to get a bit freezing and I'd moan about it, but I miss those days dearly. Tom, you signed on a permanent deal for We Are West Ham in early June. I think the heated negotiations took place with your agent at the end of May, after Charlie Hawkins, our former beloved host, left after he was the host on Love Sport Radio, and then when lockdown came, we decided to keep the show going as a podcast. Charlie stuck with us for a few weeks, fair play to him, and then decided it was time to move on. I became the main host and you came on board, and what a roller coaster ride it's been.
Exactly that, mate. And for sure, in a year which has been pretty mental for a number of reasons, that has absolutely been one of my highlights. Becoming a part of this, obviously, I was lucky enough to do a few episodes back in that dingy studio in Love Sport where I once was a fledgling producer. And yeah, and it's been amazing. It's been real. We've done some amazing things, some really exciting work we've done and interviews. And it's all in all, it's been one of the favorite things that has come into my life this year. And I'm very thankful for it and look forward to the next year of really pushing it on and keep growing this pod that we're doing, because it's a lot of fun to do it with you two.
Absolutely.
Go on.
Say that again.
I was just going to say also on the pitch, I feel like we're only growing and we're only getting better, and we're growing some sort of West Ham identity that we truly have wanted to see for a long time now, in a number of years. And fingers crossed that Moyes gets the time and the players keep growing and keep growing as a unit and start finding this level of consistency that we've so longed for since we moved to Olympic Stadium. So long may it continue, lads.
Absolutely, mate. So what we've decided to do, me, Tom and James have given ourselves a week off between Christmas and New Year. We did have calendars filled with loads of exciting plans with friends and family, but all three of us now living in London or around London in the southeast of England have been told that our lives have to go back to sort of sitting around, not doing a lot, not seeing many people because of Tier 4, as I'm sure happened to loads of you at home. So it's not like on the Wednesday that this podcast will get released, this end of year review. It's not like any of you lot or any of us will be doing anything that exciting anyway. However, we thought we'd have a rest. So this podcast will be coming out to you on the Wednesday, as usual, in between Christmas and New Year. But rather than reviewing the game that we've just seen and the game coming up, we just decided to have a little look back at 2020 on the pitch for West Ham United. It's been a tumultuous one. We kicked off the year on the West Ham show and now the We Are West Ham podcast with an interview with Jimmy Walker talking about David Moyes' new appointment, the game against Bournemouth, which took place in early January, and it all started so swimmingly. And our latest interview, we've gone through countless guests: Tony Cottee, Tony Carr, Tony Gale, Dean Ashton, Frank McAvenny, Craig Forrest, Martin Allen, John Moncur, Wally Downs, Matt Taylor, Danny Gabardon and Jimmy Walker, to name just a few of the former West Ham players or legendary members of staff we've had on. We've also had established journalists from The Sun, The Athletic, Sky Sports News, The Daily Mail, The Guardian, Football London and The Evening Standard, as well as plenty of fan guests for our opposition view. Jonesy, we've been pretty blessed on that side of things, but the first ever We Are West Ham podcast that was a Love Sport radio show, when it got uploaded in April 2018, in total now, just 251 people have listened to that particular show. All of our listeners are, of course, or the majority in those days, were live radio listeners. Since then, the podcast gets well into the thousands each week, which we absolutely love. It's absolutely brilliant to have so many of you tuning in to listen to what the three of us have got to bang on about every week, as if we know any more than anyone else, which we obviously don't. But 2020, Jonesy, started on the pitch in pretty good fashion. But of course, the main talking point at the turn of last year was David Moyes' appointment. Yeah.
Strange decision at the time. Obviously, we were all calling for Pellegrini's head at the back end of 2019. And that came, but a lot of people weren't expecting David Moyes to be his replacement, having not been good enough previously. And I think the board stuck their necks out and brought him back in, probably had to eat a little bit of humble pie at the same time. And David Moyes, in his first press conference, said winning is what he does, and everyone kind of laughed and scoffed at him and went, "Nah, no chance, mate. You know, this is gonna end badly for both parties." And we were the laughing stock, which we're probably quite used to, particularly over the last 4 or 5 years. We were the laughing stock of the Premier League at least. But it got off to a great start on New Year's Day 2020, 4-0 win over Bournemouth at home. Brace from Mark Noble, an acrobatic goal from Haller, which we've become quite accustomed to, and just a really, really good start to life under Moyes Mark II. And we really felt then, looking back, that actually it could be a back end of the season that wouldn't involve a relegation battle, but how wrong we were.
Yeah, I mean, don't forget your old mate Felipe Anderson scored in that game as well. But I took my girlfriend to that game. We've sort of like we've been going out a few months at that stage, about 6 months or so, and it was a first ever West Ham game she'd been to. So I thought I'll take her along. 4-0 at Bournemouth. She loved it. I thought it must be like this every single week. And I said, honestly, don't worry about it because it definitely isn't. And sure enough, we didn't win after that for 7 games. Tom, how were you feeling at the time when Moyes got appointed? Because I, for one, it took me a very long time to be convinced, and I'm buzzing, as James said. I'm glad to eat my words now because I think he's done an outstanding and professional job. But how did you feel at the time when Pellegrini got canned and we took Moyes back on again? That was the 30th of December.
I think I'd be lying if I didn't say I was incandescent with rage. I just wanted to stand outside Mr. Sullivan's house with pitchforks and knives and all that. But how wrong I am and how happy I am to be like you guys and sit here and say that they made a really, really good footballing choice, and he's come in and he's proven a lot of people wrong in a very, very tough job, probably one of the toughest jobs in the Premier League, if not the country at that point, with a fan base who were completely detached from the club, over a too old playing staff, the playing staff who didn't care, who were picking up pay packets and just happy to coast to West Ham. And he's completely changed the entire dynamic and the feel of the club. And I'm very, very happy, man, to now be sat here a year later and eating my words, because back then, which does feel like a lifetime ago, I wasn't sure about where West Ham were going to go and if we'd even be in the Premier League next year. So it's amazing how far we've come in a year which so much has happened.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So after that 4-0 victory over Bournemouth, we lost 1-0 at Sheffield United. Tom, one of your sort of most loved and hated games of the year, of course, when we were denied the late equaliser at Bramall Lane. You went mental. But yeah, it wasn't to be for West Ham. Then we drew 1-1 at home to Everton, goals from Issa Diop, Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Then we got an absolute schooling at Leicester, 4-1 away, before capping off the month with a 2-0 home defeat to Liverpool on the 29th of January. Mo Salah and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain with the goals. But the flavour of the month, Tom, you mentioned incandescent with rage there, were of course the protests, and the first one was that Everton home game, Jonesy, the 1-1 draw, where a band gathered out the front of the London Stadium to protest against David Sullivan and Karren Brady's ownership and running of the club. It's fair to say that those feelings have been perhaps more muted in recent times, given the performances on the pitch, but that movement is still there and perhaps will never go. That was dominating the conversation at the time. Tom, you mentioned how angry you were at the time. What could just sort of sum up the feeling among the fans and certainly people who were feeling a similar way to you at the time?
I think the overall feeling was just being let down and being lied to and being promised so much and so little being delivered, whether that be transfer strategy, managerial appointments, scouting system, protecting our own talent, not selling our top players. And I think it was just an overall feeling that West Ham left the soul of our club behind in many fans' eyes, and we've done very little, or they've done very little to carry that over from our home, from what is our home, from Upton Park and the spirit of the club. And they've really struggled to turn what was such a brilliant historic family club, where everything was about it, everything in that area was about the club, was about these ends, was about all our traditions, and we feel like we've lost that as a fan base from going to the Olympic Stadium. And it's as if the owners at that point in particular weren't particularly caring about the club or about the fans. They just were seeing us as a way to make money and a cash cow, and I think that's how a lot of fans felt, and the overriding feeling was hurt and lied to, and it felt as if the club was being ripped apart from its true traditions and the core values. And like you say, Will, I think it's definitely still there, and I think there's a large group of the fans who lose that, and I'm probably one of those who will never really forgive them, never really be totally fond of them. But I'm very happy to put that to bed and not make a problem of it when the club's performing on the pitch and all seems well at the minute, and Rice is still there, and we've got all our top players at the minute, and new contracts are being signed. So for the minute, I'm happy to be silent about it, because if the club's doing well, that's all that really matters at the end of the day.
Absolutely, yeah. Jonesy, we did beat Gillingham, of course, in January, but after the Bournemouth win, we went on the 1st of Jan, we went 16th. We finished the month after the Liverpool defeat in 17th, but on to bigger and better things, hopefully in February, but it wasn't to be. We didn't get a win until the 29th, which was a 3-1 win over Southampton at the London Stadium. But again, the main talking point within that month, that Southampton game. So Brighton at home was a 3-3 draw on the 1st of February. We went we were 2-0 up, then 3-1 up, and goals from Pascal Gross. And of course, Glenn Murray saw the Seagulls nick a point. And that was the story of our season, really, Jonesy, wasn't it? Or the story of the year, as we're doing at the moment with West Ham, going into winning positions and then throwing it away again. We finished the season with the most, I think, in Europe. We'd thrown the most points away than any team in winning positions in the whole of the continent.
I think that's still the case this season as well. Even at the back end of 2020, we're still throwing away leads more than anyone else. And I think, it didn't help, particularly at that time when we desperately needed points, and it was getting to the point where we were getting ourselves into really, really good positions. And barring the Leicester game in January, we weren't getting absolutely battered by anyone. We weren't. I don't recall us playing particularly badly at all. We were just struggling to hold on to leads, or struggling to grind out results, perhaps a little bit differently to how we've kind of learned how to do that at the back end of this year, and obviously the beginning of this season. But yeah, that was the frustrating part, and obviously it ended up being the perfect storm when you mentioned the protest, because not only were the fans frustrated with lack of investment and the return of David Moyes and the decision making there, we weren't getting results on the pitch, and we were slipping further and further into relegation problems. Those first 3 games in February, we were stuck in the bottom 3, and wondering where we were going to be this season or next season. And it took that win against Southampton on the 29th to get us out of the bottom 3. But yeah, it ended up being, it's the story of West Ham's history, I think.
Story for their entire life.
Yeah.
So it started, like I say, that 3-3 draw against Brighton, easily beaten 2-0 away at Man City on the 19th of February. And we put in a proper good performance. 24th of February, a 3-2 defeat at Liverpool. Wijnaldum, Salah and Mane with the Liverpool goals. Mane getting their third in the 81st minute after we'd given ourselves a hope. We'd even gone 2-1 up. Issa Diop scored on 12 minutes. Pablo Fornals put us 2-1 up on 54. And it looked like we might get something there, but it sort of felt like there was a little bit of hope coming, but that wasn't enough to stop, boys, the massive protest before the Southampton game, the 3-1 victory over Southampton on the 29th of February. And this time it wasn't just 1,000 people or so gathered outside the swimming pool on the Olympic Park. This was thousands and thousands of people, varied estimates, of course. I think groups who were involved in the organisation, Hammers United, were a prominent one, as well as a couple of others. They were suggesting it was 7,000 fans. I think the club were trying to say it was towards the 1,000, 2,000 mark. Certainly, I was living right by the stadium at the time, and I saw the fans walking past so early in the day, and there was no way that there was only 1,000 or 2,000 people there. Video footage got mainstream media attention. Flares were let off in pubs, and along the Greenway there was, the pictures you can see. There's fans walking, big, huge groups of fans walking for miles and miles and miles. Tom, I know, Josie, I know you were in a pub beforehand where there was sort of, the app was a little bit testy, shall we say, before that game. What were your two, what are your memories of those? We'll start with you, James.
Yeah, I was in the Habitat, which is only a short walk from the stadium, and our normal match day routine was to get to the Habitat for 11:30, And by the time we got there at that time, the pub was already rammed with fans who were quite clearly there, ready to attend the protest. You know, I think by this time, coronavirus is becoming a bit of a thing in the mainstream media. So people had masks with GSB out on and stuff like that. So, and then the flare went off in the middle of the pub, which was at the time a little bit like, guys, what are you doing? Like, save those for outside the ground sort of thing. But, and then a fight kicked off. Some guy lamped another guy, and it was all a little bit, and I was getting a little bit worried because, you know, a lot was made about these protests being peaceful, and we need to protest. There's a purpose behind these protests. It's not just an excuse to go out and cause trouble. There's an end goal here, and some of the events that happened, particularly in the Abbey Tap, made me wonder whether that was going to be the case. But thankfully, they turned out to be pretty good and peaceful protests in the end, and it was definitely more than 1,000 there. There's probably 1,000 people in and around the Abbey Tap alone. So yeah, it was an interesting build up to the game. One that, you know, I think a lot of the protesting fans and a lot of us can be relatively proud of, because it got some good media attention as well for those that wanted that media attention, but all for the right reasons, which I think is the key point. All for the right reasons, and it's got better since, but you know, those protests are very important for the end goal, which is obviously, you know, everyone wants Gold and Sullivan to eventually sell up.
Yeah, Tom, Paul Colborne, who was the guy who planted the corner flag in the middle of the pitch in that infamous Burnley game. He's chairman of Hammers United now. And in an interview with The Telegraph at the time, he said, in my opinion, the owners have killed a football club with the move. Sullivan and Gold love to tell people they do not take a salary, but they have taken £18.6 million in interest payments on their loans to the club. We believe the board have seriously underestimated us, the fans, and that we can force real big change. Obviously, no change yet. Gold and Sullivan still in situ. I think the coronavirus, which, as James said, we'll get onto, benefited them as far as that's concerned, because the fans were then locked out. What's your, just briefly, what's your memories of that day where sort of the biggest protest West Ham fans have seen probably since like the early 90s in the Bond scheme?
I was actually working on the football games that day. So before work, I actually went down with my brother to the Carpenters and met him and did a little bit of the march, just so I was at least there and showed my presence and was part of the fans voicing what we think and giving ourselves a platform to say what we actually believe in the right way, like Jonesy said, not by going around in just two-fitting cars and lamps and all that, but by doing it in the right, proper way. And I think that was the moment that West Ham fans were taking a bit more seriously and started to win a few friends in the media and start to listen to what we were saying and looking into more detail as to why we're angry. And it's not just about not winning the Premier League and getting angry at the Champions League. We're angry about a number of things which aren't just revolving around how successful our team is. It's about what the owners have done, what they've made out of it for themselves. And I think it was a good moment. I was down there, and I was only down there briefly for part of the morning, but I was pretty proud, to be honest. There was a big turnout. Everyone was jovial, obviously looking forward to the game. But at the end of the day, the purpose was clear and evident. And I think people sat up and took notice. And I was proud to be a part of that. And I'm sure if everything comes back, I think West Ham fans aren't idiots, and we still believe in the same thing, like both of you have just said. And there is their end goal, and that's never going to change regardless, because the damage has already been done, regardless of how successful we are. But at least now we're being a successful team, and we've got something to be proud of on the pitch, and we can go with that. And fingers crossed it carries on, because I'm enjoying it very much.
Absolutely. Yeah, one thing, lads, before we move on, March is obviously going to be a very short month for us to review, as there was only the one game before coronavirus reared its head and ruined everyone's lives for the distant future, or for the future from that date. One thing that did happen in February, which again didn't do the board any favours at all, was their legal challenge to Sky Sports after... to be honest, they were, you know, their panel on the Sunday supplement show, which doesn't run anymore, but had lots of well-known mainstream journalists sitting around, and a few of them, to be quite honest, just got stuck in to the West Ham board and said the things that a lot of the fans have been saying for a very long time. And West Ham, again, you questioned the decision at the time. One of our most popular, our most listened to episodes is our episode titled Press Debacle Press Backlash after Sunday Supplement debacle. Go back and listen to that if you fancy it, because that is an interesting listen. We did that back in early February of this year. Sky Sports and Jeff Shreves, I believe it was forced to read out an apology to West Ham at the beginning of the week after's episode. I mean, I do go back and listen to that episode, because I say there's a reason it's one of our most listened to. I think people liked what we did at the time. We broke it down. We looked at it quite pragmatically. But Jonesy, looking back to that now, I mean, what a farce that seems, because when you were listening to it, the original Sky Sports program, it was just people finally, a lot of the fans thought, saying what they'd felt for ages. It didn't seem anything particularly libelous or anything really worth being apologised about. But the West Ham owners didn't take it that way.
No, I think from our perspective as fans, I think it was a relief to actually be getting the backing from the press, because for so long it had just been the fans, protesting and making themselves heard and making their protests heard for so long, and there'd even been reports or journalists in the press going, what they're moaning about, what you're moaning about, particularly I'm talking a few years before when we were moaning about Sam Allardyce, and you had the likes of John Cross going, be careful what you wish for and stuff like that. And so I think from a fan's point of view, we never really felt as if we had the press on our side when we were voicing our concerns over the way the club was being run. So that was a relief for journalists of that caliber on a show like that to actually finally seem as though they were on our side. And then for the club to react the way they did was, particularly in the position that they were in, to react like that was almost just stoke the fire even further. And I still look back now and I just find it baffling that they even had the audacity to come out and demand an apology when none of it was, as you said, none of it was libelous. It was, a lot of it was factual. And, they were basically repeating what fans weren't happy about. And that should have been a call for the club to actually sit back and go, okay, well, perhaps we need to do something about this. Perhaps we need to listen to someone. And instead they reacted with a lawsuit and demanded an apology, which was completely unacceptable and still baffling to this day.
Yeah, I mean, it was a legal letter, just to get just so we're clear here on the We Are West Ham podcast. It was a legal letter that was went into Sky on behalf of the West Ham board at the time. And Jeff Shreves, Tom, I'll read this to you. Jeff Shreves read out at the beginning of the show. On last week's show, there was a discussion about West Ham. Following conversations this week between the Sunday Supplement and the club, we apologise for any factual inaccuracies made on the programme. Recently published accounts show West Ham have invested heavily in the squad since their move to the new stadium, with a net spend of 240 million in the last 4 years, including club record Sebastian Haller. They spent over 1.5 million on scouts in the past year and also invested 10 million in the training grounds at Rush Green and Chadwell Heath. In response to claims that the appointment of Stuart Pearce was vetoed by the board, the club say it isn't true. During the discussion, it was remarked that the club had a culture of everyone has got their hands in the till. This was a reference to the level of commitment of some players and managers and was not a suggestion of any illegality in any way. We apologise if this wasn't made clear. It was also suggested that during their time in charge of Birmingham, David Gold and David Sullivan presided over no significant investment. During their time at the club, they invested in the redevelopment of the ground, including 3 new stands and 22,000 new seats. As a result, St Andrews has been awarded Asset of Community Value status. Sky Sports always strives for fairness and accuracy in our programme. This was also, Tom, around the time that David Gold was found to have been liking tweets targeting West Ham supporters and targeting tweets that had called them morons and Neanderthals. It was PR nightmare, to say the least, at the time, wasn't it? But they sort of didn't really seem too bothered by the whole thing, did they?
Yeah, I think we've come accustomed to being that they're three of them are just very, very arrogant individuals, and if anyone has a go at them, they feel like they're powerful enough to have a hit back, and whoever that is, they always want to stand up for themselves, and they can't just go under the radar and be like normal chairmen of the club and just sit there, be ghost and just be their hands, be a puppet master. They want to be front and center, and they like being the superstars. They like being in the press. They like being known as football owners, and you can't get away from it. They love it, and they love the limelight, and that's one of the main reasons they're in football, I believe, because it gives them a sort of celebrity status where they can do things like this and pull tricks. It's mental. The thing you've just read out from Jess Shreves, which he was forced to read, is just, when you hear it back like that, and I was listening to every word, it just makes you, really does make you wonder how that's even a thing that they really care about. Why are they so invested in what Sky is saying about them anyway? Get in and do your job properly. That you don't do it for them. You do it for the good of the club, and you do it to be the best football owners possible. You don't do it to appease Sky Sports and journalists and presenters like that. So just really remarkable. And like you say, I think we'll see it won't be the first or last time we'll see things like that from David Gold with his Twitter, because that man's a PR disaster every single day, basically.
Yeah, I do think sort of at the time, David Gold particularly, he's in his 80s now. It does feel a little bit, doesn't sit right with me too often, to be honest, going in two-footed on a guy in his 80s. I think a lot of the anger, certainly this year, Jonesy, I'm sure you'd agree, seems to have switched more towards Sullivan in particular. There is a little bit of anger, of course, towards Brady as well. But yeah, I would say it seems to have switched to David Sullivan the most. Well, lads, look, after that, the protest seemed to work, because we went out and beat Southampton 3-1 on the 29th of February. We were 16th in the league after that game. We hauled ourselves out of the relegation zone with those 3 points. And then we went into March thinking, come on, we need to build on this win. And we went along to the Emirates Stadium on the 7th of March, not realizing at the time I was lucky enough to be at that game in a work capacity. And to be honest, we lost 1-0 this is 7th of March at the Emirates. Alexander Lacazette's 78th minute goal was the winner. We were really unlucky. We played really well. We certainly didn't deserve to lose the game. We definitely deserved at least a point, probably could have won it as well. And then that was our very last game until June. What do you remember of that period of time, James?
I mean, it seems like years ago, let alone 7 months ago, 8 months ago. But I remember that game because Jared Bowen hit the post, I think, in the first half, and we were really, really pushing at Arsenal and really putting them under a lot of pressure, and it was a bit of a sucker punch to end up losing it, particularly as you quite rightly said, going into it on the back of a 3-1 win, and really feeling like we could put a run of results together and get out of trouble. And I think even at that point, there were still question marks over, whether the season would be stopped. I don't think there was any talk of lockdown even on the 7th of March. It was all a little bit like, there's a virus going around, but as you were. And so, I mean, even coming out of that, losing 1-0, gutted, but feeling relatively positive about what was to come over the next couple of months and towards the end of the season. Little
did we know, hey, Tom. I say that we were unfortunate Arsenal. Just quickly while we're on it, it'd be remiss of us not to sort of move away from the football a little bit. What do you remember of that time, sort of coronavirus wise, and how did that sort of affect you in your life, like it did everyone else, of course, in different ways?
I think just the fear of not really knowing the severity of it, not knowing what you're dealing with. Obviously, I've got my dad who suffers from asthma, I was living with at the time, and you're worried for him, you're worried for all those around you. Just total confusion. And I was obviously working, at the time I was working in sports media, working for Love Sport, and that company was struggling massively economically, and they ended up going under, sadly, largely down to coronavirus and just no stability in any aspect of life. That's what I really took away from that. But in the end, I had a great 3 months at home with my old man, which I and my family, and there's positives which have come out of it in the long run. And I think now we're slowly but surely, as individuals, probably getting more used to this terrible thing, and getting mentally more stable and mentally better at coping with it and looking after our loved ones. So it was just the instability and not knowing what next. And I think that everyone can probably relate to that. And fingers crossed we're not sat here next year talking about it, because I think we all deserve a break, our reality of it.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, Jonesy, same sort of thing for you. I remember sort of sitting in the office at the time, and we left it a little bit late. Like lots of people had started, like friends of mine had already been told, right, work from home now. I'm not sure what's going on. Everything's shutting down. And we were still in quite a little bit late. And I was thinking, oh, it's getting a bit uncomfortable here. Like, surely now's the time. Still didn't know loads about it. I can't remember the exact date it was. But I worked that that Arsenal game, and then in the days following was when the country started shutting down, basically. And yeah, we finally got told to work from home, but after someone in our office got it, I think. And it was a peculiar time, wasn't it? But I do remember it feeling quite novel, thinking, this is, people have been saying this for ages. Wouldn't it be lovely to just be able to go home and work from home forever and not be able to go into work? But as time's gone on, that has proved definitely not to be the case.
Yeah, looking back, it's a strange one. I think I was in the office on the Monday, I think it was, before Boris Johnson announced, or basically advised everyone to work from home. I think it was actually on that day, and leaving the office that evening or that afternoon and walking towards the train station in Farringdon, and literally just loads of people walking towards the station, all holding computer monitors, all ready to go home and do second screening and stuff like that. And it was just like, what on earth's going on here? Like, this is madness. And then obviously, probably a week later, lockdown was announced and everyone was being furloughed. And, you start thinking, is my job safe? I mean, I'm very, very fortunate that I wasn't furloughed and my job was safe throughout. I find myself very, very fortunate about that. But it was just a really, really difficult and trying time for everyone. And living where I am in a one bed flat at the time, my son was about 4 months old, and that literally living on top of each other with a small newborn made it even harder, especially when I haven't got any desk space. So my desk was my bed for months on end, and very, very difficult mentally, physically, but we got through it. I've got to go through it again now, hopefully for not as long. But I think the key thing is that I think once this is all over, everyone will come out of it stronger, mentally at least. It's been difficult, but I think there's light at the end of the tunnel now.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. So we spent, after that March, we spent the next couple of months bickering and arguing whether the season should be cancelled. Karren Brady, of course, came out and said that she thinks the season should be curtailed. West Ham were just outside the relegation zone at the time. There was some cynics among West Ham fans and among journalists that even suggested that Karren was just saying it because West Ham were sitting in 16th place at the time, just 2 spots above the relegation zone. And I remember at the time thinking football should be stopped. It's not important. Why are you putting the players at risk? Getting relegated from the Premier League, etc., shouldn't matter, and it doesn't matter. And I was quite vocal about that for those 2 months. Tom, what was your take on it at the time? Because I think when it came back, it was obviously good to have something to watch, I guess, and the fact that it has been able to be done safely was pretty good. But I was all for just scrapping it, because I thought in my eyes, there's still an asterisk next to Liverpool's title win next season, and there always will be. And I don't think it just doesn't feel the same. It still doesn't feel the same now. Me and you were lucky enough to get in and go and watch them against Man United the other day, which was good. It felt like fans should be there. Obviously, you want more than that, but just having people there watching it just doesn't feel right watching it on the telly, and I almost don't think it should count. Unless, of course, we get in the Champions League this season, then happy days.
Exactly. I'm with you. At the time, I remember being very sadly agreeing with you, actually, mate, and thinking that.
Which you don't often
Yeah,
do, to be
exactly. Yeah,
fair, do
exactly.
you?
And I don't usually tell you if I do anyway, but yeah, I thought why the season's best part of it's done. You can either like cancel it now and just leave it as it is and leave the table as it is, or have no relegations or whatever it was. It just didn't feel important at the time when every day you're surrounded by the news about death tolls and things like that. It just didn't seem right. But I would like Moyes, I'd like to say I was wrong. I think it's been a galvanizing thing. I think it's helped lots of people out because it gives you something to look forward to now. And yeah, it's different. Of course it's different. And it's a very different type of football which we're seeing as a result of it. Look at the Premier League this season. Look at the results you're getting. Look how tight it is. Look how little advantage there is for the home sides now, and the amount of goals that are going in. The game has changed because fans aren't there, and it will take some getting used to, and I hope we don't get used to it, because when I was there with you, Will, like you said, I felt like football was back for me. That was the moment that I felt like this is what we've been waiting for, to come and make a Saturday and make a weekend out of the football again and be able to be there, experience it, feel the energy, feel the intensity of the ground and the stadium. And that was special. And I always remember that. And it's sad that we're now in the position again where that probably seems months away now, where people in London be able to go to a football match. And
Yeah,
it's a massive shame.
yeah, absolutely, mate. But again, it did come back. Jonesy, I can't even remember if this was one of our 8 million arguments that we've had this year. I think we've sort of been getting on all right recently, haven't we? We haven't been going at each other too often on the podcast. Perhaps it's because we're just a little bit more understanding now. We're so far apart from each other and doing it over Zoom. But I can't remember whether we went head to head to that or not. Just briefly, were you for football coming back, or did you want the season scrapped?
I was all for it. I understood
So we did argue.
So we did argue. Yeah, I understood the reasons why, or the arguments behind having it scrapped. Obviously, there were far more important things going on at the time than football. But at the same time, I felt that people needed something. They needed something to give them a lift. And obviously, we all know how important football is to so many people's lives, not just here but globally. It's it's massive. And I think it got to the point 2 or 3 months into lockdown, particularly at the beginning of lockdown, when the government told us it'll only be a few weeks before we're all back to normal. And once we'll sort it all out, and it ended up being 3 or 4 months before we were allowed to leave the house almost. And by then, people just needed something to look forward to. They needed a bit of entertainment. That's why I was all for football coming back in some capacity. Even if it was behind closed doors, whack them all on the box, which they did, and we could at least have something to look forward to at the weekend. And by that time, there's so much football going on. It just made lockdown and everything else just far more bearable. And I think that was a good thing at the time, definitely.
Yeah, fair play, mate. You were right. We were wrong again. We ended up coming back, West Ham, on the 20th of June. In the end, it was decided that football was going to make a comeback behind closed doors, of course, at the time. 20th of June, West Ham 0, Wolverhampton Wanderers 2. We got... Well, it could have been more, basically. Wolves definitely deserved the win. Raul Jimenez and Pedro Neto getting the goals for the visitors. Adama Traore had an absolute field day down that right-hand side, didn't he? I think over Aaron Cresswell. He pinged the ball across for Jimenez's header, and then a very similar goal for Neto on 84 minutes to wrap it up. Then we went to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and lost 2-0. Harry Kane and Thomas Souček's own goal. And it wasn't looking very good, was it? We were 17th again after those 2 games, and you thought, here we go. Are we going to go down? This is a real possibility. And I thought, this would just be typical West Ham to go down while there's no fans, just in the most tragic scenario possible, in the worst year in the history of the human race. It wasn't very good, was it, in June, and the comeback? That Tottenham game, I think I've sort of managed to erase it from my mind. Josie, can you what were you feeling towards the end of that June? We lost 2 games, 2-0 on the bounce after football's come back, and it was all pretty grim then.
Yeah, despite everything I just said, by then I was like, I should have cancelled the season, should have got rid of it. Because it was, and I remember we recorded that week's episode directly after that Tottenham result, I remember.
Yes,
And
we did, yeah.
We were all just completely beaten, weren't we? We were like, what happens next? You know, we're going to go down. Because Chelsea was next up at home, and we were like, this is going to end badly. Already called for Moyes to be sacked, and it was just dreadful because we weren't playing well. We played a little bit better in that Tottenham game, but that Wolves game in particular was just dreadful. Absolutely, it's got to be probably our worst performance of 2020 for me. Just ridiculous. And I don't know whether that partly that was down to just players not really used to not having fans in the stadium. It was an empty ground. Obviously, the first game they played behind closed doors, but the feeling after, particularly after that Tottenham game, was we're going down, and looking forward to the Championship.
That Tom, there were people at the time, West Ham fans, thinking perhaps, well, you know what, maybe going down is just what we need to. Either there was some thinking it would be a bit of a two fingers up to the board, others thinking, well, perhaps we just need that, perhaps that will get them out and we just need to rebuild. Were you of that thought process, or were you just like, no, we need to hang on and do whatever we can? Because I must admit there was a bit of me thinking, you know what, I really enjoyed it last time we were in the Championship, and maybe it will be one of those times where, you know, the those that are in charge of the club, that would be a grave consequence to them, wouldn't it, in their financial planning and that sort of thing. It would have been a nightmare. There was a little bit of me that actually thought, you know what, I wouldn't mind, because I actually really enjoyed West Ham and going to West Ham when we were in the Championship.
It definitely, there's no doubt, it's definitely one of those things that crossed my mind, because ultimately that money, we all know that, and it would have hurt them. But it shouldn't be the fans and the club who suffer as a result of that to get three people out. So ultimately, no, I think I wanted us to stay up. I wanted us to be the best football club we possibly can and to be the most successful. And in order to be that, we have to be in the Premier League. And at the time, no, I could see no way of that actually happening. Particularly, like you said, after that Spurs result, I remember just thinking, like we were on that Zoom you just said there doing the pod, and we were just done. I saw no way out. We just didn't look like scoring. Could have been there for days and days and days, and we wouldn't have scored. And I just thought there's no chance of us staying up. But no, I think I always have been, and my friends have said this for a while now, if we go down, maybe I'll kick him out. But I've never got on board with that, because I want to watch West Ham in the Premier League, and I myself don't want to suffer because of three other people. And I think that's what I want for a football club. I want us to be the best football club, regardless of those three in charge.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, look, from 3 games from the beginning of March to the end of June, we then had 7 in July. West Ham, of course, had already crashed out of the FA Cup long ago in January in embarrassing fashion to West Brom. So by this stage, it was only Premier League action to concentrate on. And the Chelsea game, where did that come from, Jonesy? 3-2. Andre Yarmolenko, heroic stuff in the 89th minute, albeit from stinking defending from Chelsea. Willian put Chelsea 1-0 up on 42 minutes. Thomas Souček equalised on the stroke of half-time. Antonio puts us 2-1 up before Willian scored again. 2-2. You thought, that's not bad. A point at home to Chelsea. Lovely stuff. Happy days. And then, bang, out of nowhere, the big counter-attack. Ball played into Andre Yarmolenko and ping, bottom corner. What a goal. West Ham United 3, Chelsea 2.
Yeah, it was that was the result really, which kickstarted our survival bid. I think, you know, had we lost that, I do genuinely believe we would have gone down. It was a result and a victory in that kind of manner that really kicked the players up their backsides, I think, and showed that they are good enough. And Moyes was beginning to get what he wanted out of the team. And, you know, a lot of people forget that, you know, Souček had a goal ruled out just before his equaliser by VAR, because I think Antonio was on the floor and was deemed to have been in the way of the goalkeeper, even though the goalkeeper was standing up. And so we should have already had that game won. But we did it the hard way, as we always do. And it was just brilliant. And for Yarmolenko to come off the bench, didn't he, and to get the winner. By then, I felt actually that we've got a chance here. We've got a chance. It's a small chance, but after losing to Tottenham and seeing Chelsea at our next, we're dead and buried. To then, a week later, thinking, hang on, we might just do it. But yeah, it was a great moment. Great moment.
Yeah, Tom, that 3-2 Chelsea game, it was brilliant. And I don't know, you kind of felt we were 16th again. It still was nothing to write home about, but you thought it showed at least a bit of heart, and the players were all delighted at the end, weren't they? Like the classic one. I know people have said that stereotype after we got the result at Tottenham with Lanzini scoring the goal in the 3-3, where all the players were involved in the celebrations, but everyone was delighted for Yarmolenko. Yarmolenko as well, a bit of a fringe player, hadn't been getting action in the team, but he was thrilled to come on and get that goal. We then went on, lads, Newcastle at home 2-2 draw, and then a disappointing 1-0 defeat away at Burnley. And then we can't, of course, move on.
Other way around.
Was it?
Yeah.
Where do we have Chelsea? And what do we have? The draw at Newcastle, then the defeat at Burnley.
Yeah, but Newcastle was away, Burnley was at home.
Oh, was it? Oh, my bad. Sorry. Oh, yeah, Newcastle, St James's Park, Burnley, London Stadium. They don't play at the London Stadium, do they? Burnley. Yeah, so 2-2 with Newcastle away. Decent result. 1-0 home defeat to Burnley. Not good at all. But Norwich City away. They were relegation fodder at the time, but that was a huge game. I remember thinking that definitely felt like the turning point for me. That was on the 11th of July, and there's only one man you can talk about that game, Michail Antonio. 4 goals in one game, 3 points with a 4-0 victory at Carrow Road. And again, now is probably the time, Jonesy, to heap praise on Michail Antonio. As we're recording this, he's just signed a new contract in the past few days, which I think is great news. Will take him to 2023 at the club. But what a man. His dad died in March, Mikhail's, and since then, after the restart, he kept us up single-handedly, I believe. He's carried that form into this season as well. He's unfortunately injured at the moment, but that game at Norwich, it was great for the club and great for him.
Yeah, massive. He, as you said, he pretty much kept us up single-handedly, and to go away to a team that we had to beat them to relegate them, but it was still a massive game for us regardless. And to go there and win 4-0 and for him to get all 4 was massive for his own confidence, because he probably knew it himself that him playing up front, it was down to him to keep us in the Premier League, and he must have felt that pressure, but to kind of just brush that pressure off and just go out there and perform week in, week out, and to become the first West Ham player to bang 4 in a single Premier League game. It led to him being the only ever player to be awarded Player of the Month in July in the Premier League as well. So it just deserves so much respect, and absolutely deserves that new contract he's just signed. He's got his eyes on being West Ham's all-time Premier League top goal scorer with 9. I think at the time of recording, he's still got 9 to go. So I'm sure he'll get that as well. So much deserved from him.
Yeah, that's what he's saying. He's aiming for that 50 goals in the Premier League mark for West Ham. He's on 39 at the moment. Tom, then we went and sort of, I can't remember exactly when it was that confirmed our Premier League survival, but a 3-1 win over Watford was the second in a run of 4 unbeaten games towards the end of the season. 3-1, 3-0 up inside 36 minutes. Declan Rice scores an absolute screamer. Troy Deeney got a consolation for Watford in the 49th minute. They were obviously struggling at the time as well, but those were 2 huge games, and we made absolute mincemeat of both of the teams who ended up going down themselves.
Yeah, those 2 were defining fixtures when we looked at the restart when we came back. I think those 2 were the 2 we sort of earmarked. Well, the Newcastle, Burnley, Norwich, Watford, that 4 was the critical games we had to get some points from. And we did that. And I know Jonesy just spoke about him there, but it was Antonio who kicked us off against Watford with a brilliant finish on his left foot, if I believe I'm right. And he scored 8 goals that month, 8 Premier League goals in a month. And there was a lot more games that month, but that is a lot of goals, and that literally kept us afloat single-handedly. And he changed that game, because I remember been quite tight at the start. They might have even started pretty well, Watford, and he got a half chance, no more than a half chance on his left foot, and it's a brilliant finish. And he's always been criticised for having a weak left foot and poor technically, and it was literally the perfect finish for a right-footed striker on his left. And yeah, I just remember being incredibly nervous for both of those two games, but we got good starts in both and we carried on and we ended up winning them very, very comfortably in the end. And I think that's when I started to truly believe in the power of Souček and just how good he is, because he was an influence in both of those heavily.
That's it. Well, we kind of brushed over those, but Thomas Souček, of course, and Jared Bowen both signed in January. Souček on the 29th on loan, a deal which was then made permanent at the end of the season. Jared Bowen coming in from Hull on the 31st, and both have been in our top two players of the year. The board have been heavily criticised in the past, of course, for their recruitment, but it is impossible to deny that Thomas Souček and Jared Bowen have been outstanding signings for West Ham this year. Vladimir Kufal, again, close friend and former teammate of Thomas Souček at Slavia Prague, then comes in at the end of the season over the summer, and he's been a revelation as well. So definitely big kudos and praise to David Moyes and the club for bringing those players in. Jonesy, we then wrapped it up with 2 1-alls, one far more impressive than the other, to finally get the longest and strangest season in recent memory done and dusted. Manchester United, we went to Old Trafford, got a 1-1 draw. Michail Antonio scores a penalty, which Mark Noble gave him to ensure that he bagged his £250,000 goal bonus, which he got for reaching 10 goals that season. Mason Greenwood scored United's on 51 minutes to mean we shared the points before that last game against Aston Villa, which Andrei Yarmolenko's luckiest, flukiest deflected goal ever levelled the scores after Grealish had put Villa 1 up. They obviously needed the point to stay up, which they got. That game didn't feel like it mattered as much then. But all in all, what was your feelings at the end of that season after those 2 games?
I think feeling of positivity leading into this season, because one
not
defeat,
just relief like mine.
Well, relief definitely, the fact that we stayed up, I think, but particularly going into those last 2 games when survival was, I think the win against Watford secured our survival. So we went into the United and Villa games kind of just going, let's just try and finish as high up the table as possible. I think by then it was either 15th or 16th were possible. So once the season was done, 1 defeat in our last 7 games, taking some good form into the next season, then could we get the right business done, and then obviously we all know what happened in the summer with the Diangana outrage at the time, and obviously Soufal coming in and stuff like that. So just felt as if David Moyes had begun to get something out of that squad that we've been hoping he could get out of the squad, and then the hope was then, okay, well, can he build on that in the summer, and then can he take that into the following season? And it all kind of rested on whether he was going to be backed in the summer and whether he could get the right business done. And obviously mentioned Soufal was a superb signing, but yeah, I think all in all, that kind of laid the foundations for what we're seeing now. I think that 1 defeat in 7, which West Ham don't normally go on Premier League runs like that, do we? We're a little bit inconsistent normally. So yeah, felt good, relieved, but good.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that of course meant that we finished the season in 16th place. I mean, that is certainly not the world-class football for a world-class stadium that us and all the other tens of thousands of West Ham fans whose lives were changed inexplicably when the team moved from Upton Park to the London Stadium. But things seem to have picked up a little bit in the next season. So stay with us for the next season next. So 16th place in the weirdest football season in living memory, 2019-20, finished in positive fashion under David Moyes. The fans weren't allowed in stadiums to vent any frustrations they may still have had with the board or the players. There was a feeling, Jonesy, you've mentioned there, of positivity going into this season. We had a few pre-season friendlies crammed in a few days. Ipswich, we beat Ipswich away, Wycombe Wanderers away, Brentford at home 2-1, and then lost 5-3 at home to Bournemouth. I managed to squeeze myself in to the London Stadium. I was very grateful to be able to get in for that Bournemouth game, and it was a shambles, an absolute shambles. Ben Johnson got hauled off after about 25 minutes, which is quite something in a pre-season friendly. Arnaut Danjuma for Bournemouth was running riot down that left-hand side, and I came away from that game on the 5th of September just worried, just thinking, what on earth is going on here? Like, we finished the season so well that we weren't doing anything in the summer transfer window, which was sparking up fury among the fans again. And then, of course, that Bournemouth game, Tom, had come just after we'd sold Grady Diangana to West Brom. So funny, James. I think it was you who recently mentioned on the podcast how comical it was after I think we just got another good result to go fifth. You were saying it seems like ages ago now that everyone was booting off about selling Grady Diangana to our nearest rivals and only signing £5 million Vladimir Soufal. But Tom, I was worried after that Bournemouth game. Mark Noble had tweeted saying how disappointed he was that the club had let Grady go. Lose 5-3 at home to Bournemouth, and it was looking a little bit woeful going into the new season, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's never a good look when the bastion of the club captain, who's over 500 appearances, comes out and basically hammers the club for selling one of the youngest prospects on the eve of the Premier League starting, with a fixture list which would literally scare any team in the world if you saw who he had to play in the first, 5-6 games. So yeah, it was a negative feeling, and on that, I still think it is the wrong decision to let Diangana go. I mean, obviously we got good money for him, and now we're in a better position. But I see no reason why we couldn't have done what we're doing now with him and who we've already got. I think that was the aim of the game when we moved the stadium, to bring through our own players and splash the cash. That's all in the past now, and yeah, it just didn't look good. And that Bournemouth result, mate, I'm so happy I wasn't there, because I would have the job would have gone out the window, that's for sure.
Yeah, it wasn't good, Jonesy. Was it one thing, of course, that we did forget to mention for July was fantastic Captain Mark Noble, as you mentioned there, Tom, reaching the incredible milestone of 500 games for the club in July in that 3-1 win over Watford. It remains to be seen. His contract, of course, expires at the end of this season. It remains to be seen in what capacity, or if at all, he will stay on at the club. I think he's come on with limited effect, of course, this season, but a great man to have around the club, a great servant. It was wonderful in amongst all of that to celebrate that milestone for Mark. But Jonesy kicked off the season after the Bournemouth game. First of all, let us know what your feelings were on Grady Diangana. I think we all heard them on the podcast at the time, very much felt the same as everyone else before we kicked off the season in very disappointing fashion with a 2-0 home defeat to Newcastle.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think I made my feelings a secret at the time about Diangana being sold. I thought it was a disgraceful decision at the time, particularly given the situation we were in from an investment perspective. We weren't investing in the squad. Yeah, we had quite a lot of wingers in the squad, but we weren't really going out there and actually investing in parts of the squad that we needed to. And then to sell one of our promising young players who, was having a very, very good pre-season up until that point. Sebastian Haller had scored a hat-trick against Ipswich, and Diangana had set them all up, and Haller's come out, our record signing, and gone, I can't wait to be playing alongside this lad next season. He's had a really good season on loan at West Brom, and we thought, right, we've got a player here. We've got a player that can slot straight into the squad, straight into the team and make an impact. And he was proving it in pre-season. And just to sell him for 18 million quid, yeah, it was good money for him. To a team that we thought would be a rival, a relegation rival, was just, at the time, it just felt unacceptable. And it just felt like we were kind of back to square one with the way the club was being run and the direction it was going in. And then you got Mark Noble, as you said, coming out and pretty much saying exactly what the fans felt. It was just ridiculous, and
it wasn't a good look for the club. That was it.
It was once again bad PR. It was the worst thing they could have done, and it wasn't a good look. And then to go into the first game, trying to put all that back behind us, going to the first game against Newcastle at home, and new season, new start. We had taken some good form from the previous seasons. That because the time between two seasons was so short. It was like 6 weeks, wasn't it? Really felt like we could start the season strongly, and just to lose in the manner that we did against Newcastle, and we just felt, here we go again. Another season of relegation battles, and another season looking over our shoulder. Lack of investment in the playing squad. We desperately need a centre half. Here we go again. And at that time, after that Newcastle game, for me in particular, I just thought, I'm just not sure how much more I can take of this, because it genuinely felt like after ending the season with so much positivity, 6 weeks later, just feeling like we haven't gone anywhere. And if anything, we've gone backwards in the space of 6 weeks. It felt like typical West Ham. But at the same time, I remember feeling, I don't know, I just don't know how much more I can do of just having to just constantly go into every weekend just feeling disappointed and angry and upset about the way the football club, the direction in which the football club's going. So, not a great start to this season.
Yeah, trying to make good out of negativity. Tom, then we lose the end of September. We lost 2-1 away at Arsenal. Eddie Nketiah scored in the 86th minute. We played a lot better. Michail Antonio scored on 45 minutes to equalise after Lacazette had put the Gunners 1-0 up earlier in the game. This was when, in those old days, when Arsenal were all right at football and West Ham didn't look that good. How long ago does that feel now?
Mental, honestly, mental. Everything's happening so quickly this year. It's just so up and down. You can really get your head around it. But I honestly think that was the moment where we were lucky, I think. I think it might have been an injury which forced us to play 5 at the back. And ever since then, we've not looked back now. I know now in the current minute we're playing 4 at the back again, and we switched back to that. And Benrahma's come in the side. But that was the watershed moment. I think we went away to Arsenal and we were very, very unlucky not to win that game. I mean, we probably should have had a penalty to go. I think it was maybe 2-1 in front, and we had a few chances at 1-1. We had a few chances at 0-0, and we just looked like a proper side. We looked like a more solid side, and of course, the negativity was still there after losing because we played well in a game, and then you look at the fixtures after, and it was looking very, very bleak. But I think that was the moment where we found a bit of our mojo. Moyes and the coaching staff looked at it and thought, hang on, maybe we have a system here which suits our players to a T, with Masuaku as a left wing back and so on and so forth. And wise man once said on this podcast that we should play 5 at the back, and I don't think it was Will, was it?
As we have established already, Tom, David Moyes and most of the first team squad listen to the We Are West Ham podcast at the moment. Moyesy heard my recommendation the week before to play 5 at the back and get the best football out of Arthur Masuaku. That is exactly what he did. And of course, in more recent times, he's learnt from me that it's actually a good idea to be angry after victories and start booting off in the media or on the podcast, depending whether your surname is Pugh or Moyes Jones. Then it started picking up, didn't it? I mean, form unlike which we have ever seen at West Ham United since the end of September when we beat Wolves 4-0. Jared Bowen with a brace, Raul Jimenez own goal, and Sebastian Haller in the last minute of extra time to rub it in, make amends for the 2-0 home defeat to Wolves just a few months earlier when football had come back. What a turnaround, and that was really the springboard for the outstanding stuff we've seen since, when West Ham have only lost twice.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at that Wolves result, and I mean, it was on BT Sport, I think, and I don't have BT, so I was watching it on a stream. So it was a bit of a delay, but I was still getting updates on my phone from LiveScore or something. And I remember saying to my wife, obviously I was watching it, but knowing we'd scored about 5, probably the stream was so bad, it was about 5 minutes before I actually saw it, going, Luce, I think West Ham are winning 4-0 against Wolves. I don't know what's going on. And she's just like, is that good? And I'm like, I
Divorced.
don't know. Yeah, I mean, I was like, it got to the point where I wasn't even celebrating because I was just like, this can't be happening. I'm sure I'm not. Am I seeing things here? Because as you said, it was only a couple of months earlier that we got absolutely outplayed by Wolves at home and lost 2-0 just after the restart, and it just showed the complete change in mentality at the club, and obviously the system had changed, and it felt like then that things were beginning to happen, and Souček and Rice had finally got that partnership now done in midfield and making so much more of a difference, and Antonio was playing so well, Bowen was getting playing well as well, so it was the springboard for what we've so far seen this season, having only lost twice to Liverpool and United, and some fantastic results along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. So 4-0 against Wolves there. We didn't lose for more than a month after that. A 3-0 win away at Leicester, +7 goal difference in 2 games. And you thought, wow, this can't get any better. And then, Tom, Tottenham Hotspur 3, West Ham United 3. Tottenham Hotspur goal scorers: Heung-min Son 1 minute, Harry Kane 8 minutes, Harry Kane again 16 minutes. West Ham's first goal scorer, Fabian Balbuena, on 82 minutes makes it 3-1. Davinson Sanchez own goal on 85 minutes thanks to a Vladimir Coufal cross before Manuel Lanzini comes off the bench, the little Argentinian diamond, and pings one in from the edge of the box outside of the right foot, definitely sliced it straight into the top corner past a despairing, diving Hugo Lloris. All of the subs are up off of the bench. I'm stuck to the ceiling in my lounge at home. Absolute history in the making as far as West Ham fans go. Manuel Lanzini already has a lifetime place in my heart and certainly those of most Hammers. But can you put that into words? Because we will remember that on this podcast as frequently as possible.
Honestly, there was literally no words for it. It was just raw emotion when it went in. And I think, obviously, I'm not biased or anything, but it's probably one of the most iconic Premier League moments in the last decade, I'd say, because that's never happened. That has simply never happened. The team coming back from 3 goals in the last 10 minutes of a game. And it was just, that whole week was just remarkable. He stuck that in, the form we were in, scoring 7 in our previous 2, and then another 3 away at a Spurs team who were very much, they have been all season, being talked up for being title contenders. And I think that was the week Harry Redknapp and Jamie Redknapp were giving it the big and that they'll go on and win the title, or at least they have a very good chance. And,
well, they still might, Tom. So
Tony Carr, and then we had Tony Carr on to chat about it, didn't we, that week? So it was, yeah, just a brilliant week. And I'm so happy for Lanzini because he's gone through so many ups and downs in his last 2 years, and missing a World Cup for Argentina, playing next to Messi and missing out on that opportunity. Probably the closest thing which could.
Imagine how Messi felt.
Yeah, exactly. Missed out playing Lanzini.
Yeah, playing under. It still baffles me, by the way, that Lionel Scaloni is the Argentina manager now.
Brilliant.
Who I will hate forever for not just letting the ball go out in the 2006 FA Cup final. But yeah, great, absolute great scenes at Tottenham. Jonesy, before we move on to the 1-1 draw at home to Manchester City, have you got much to add on that Tottenham game? Because it was quite simply phenomenal.
I mean, all I remember is almost jumping into the TV because I launched myself off the sofa. And I've watched that goal probably, I reckon, I think Sky Sports highlights clip on Twitter had about 5 million views. I can vouch for about 4.5 million of those, I think, just myself. I watched it on repeat. The commentary made it, the occasion made it, the goal made it, the timing.
Spurs fans, montage
Spurs
videos.
fans. Every single Spurs fan I've spoken to, a lot of my mates, they go, "Oh, it was just bad keeping from Lloris." It's like, yeah, leave off. They won't admit that it was just a world class goal in the 95th minute.
History.
So yeah, I mean, I watch that goal still now. I look back and it makes me smile. It always will. A great moment, and again, just it's given us that springboard this season. It's helped us really believe that something's happening at West Ham now, and a result like that against that lot, in the way that it happened, just cements that for me.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I mean, it was phenomenal. We finished off the month with an outstanding 1-1 draw at home to Manchester City. Finished off October. Mikel Antonio, of course, again on the score sheet to put us 1-0 up before Phil Foden struck for City. And we were sitting pretty then, ninth in the league, lads. We dropped a couple of places from seventh after that Leicester win, but a very decent October. Then we went up to Anfield and lost 2-1. Very unfortunate. Once again, we've put in some good showings the last couple of times we've been up to Anfield. Once again, done by a late goal. Diogo Jota's 85th minute, cancelling out. Pablo Fornals had put us 1-0 up. Salah equalised with a penalty. So that was a bit disappointing, but then we straight into November, and what a month November was. An absolute scandal that Jose Mourinho won Manager of the Month ahead of David Moyes. 3 wins from 3, 1-0 over Fulham, 1-0 away at Sheffield United, and a 2-1 home victory over Aston Villa. 9 points from a possible 9 left West Ham in the heady heights of 5th place in the Premier League after that trio of wins. Lads, I think it's fair to say that the win against Fulham was lucky, because the Ademola Lookman penalty, hilarity at the end of the game, the most bizarre thing I think I've ever seen on a football pitch. Sebastian Haller whacking one in at Sheffield United and sulking his head off afterwards with that trademark scowl of his after he banged it in the top corner. And then we somehow clung on to beat Aston Villa, another one of this season's surprise packages, to wrap up November. All in all, Tom, I would say this season so far has been far more enjoyable to watch. Although I was angry after the Fulham game and got pelters from the pair of you. All in all, 9 points from 9. You can't say better than that, can you?
That simply is as good as it gets. And yeah, that was a weird one that Moyes didn't win it. I mean, how many has Jose got? Moyes has literally done.
No, I think it was. Tottenham played one more game in the month, so they also got 3 wins and a draw. So he got 1 point more than David Moyes, but he played one more game as well and didn't win it. So Moyes technically had a better points per game ratio. So that was an absolute disgrace. The fact the Premier League probably looked at it and thought, of those 9 points, West Ham only deserved 4 of them. So
wouldn't surprise me. And there is a Manager of the Month curse. It tends to hit teams when the manager wins it, and they tend to drop points the next few games. So I'm quite happy he avoided that one in a certain way. But yeah, brilliant. Honestly, through that, we were very lucky. And in all 3, you can argue that we got the rub of the green. I mean, McBurney hit the crossbar. I know we could have scored our fair few chances at Bramall Lane, but McBurney raced through and probably could have put one away quite late on in the game. And then the Fulham game was just one of those where everything went our way, it seemed. A last-minute goal, Lookman pen. It was just bizarre. But yeah, it doesn't get better than that. And it's much more enjoyable supporting a side who's ratting wins and staying in the heady heights of 5th than it is ratting wins to maybe nick 17th. So I'll take him if they keep coming, whichever way they come, mate.
Absolutely. Jonesy, it seemed that month, I know you were not having it, any of the fact that I had the audacity to question any of the performances or any of the players after we'd won. We all know about your big Sam Allardyce thinking and how you're still entrenched in the Allardyce ways of playing football, and you were furious with me for daring to suggest that West Ham didn't deserve anything other than 9 points. But the one thing we did learn from November was that basically West Ham missed chances was going to be a problem. 5th of December, Manchester United at home. Me and fans were finally allowed back in. Me and Tom were lucky enough to go, and that came back to bite us on the backside. Missed loads of glaring chances in the first half, and then Rashford and Fernandes come on at halftime. Wham bam, thank you, ma'am. Greenwood and Rashford and Pogba scoring, even though Dean Henderson's clearance in the build-up to Pogba's goal was miles out for a throw-in. It definitely came back to bite us, didn't it?
Yeah, and it's been our problem. I think it almost became a problem in the Leeds game after, and it's something that, you know, obviously we don't know at the time of recording what's going to happen between now and the end of the calendar year. I think we've still got 3 fixtures to play, but that's something that did especially cost us against United and could have cost us in other games. You know, we were very, very fortunate against Fulham. Very, very fortunate at home to Villa as well, where, you know, again, more missed chances. We could have had that game put to bed in the first half. So yeah, that it's an issue, but luckily, you know, we've managed to get away with it. And luck and West Ham don't normally go hand in hand, but so far this season, it appears to, more often than not, we appear to be getting relatively fortunate, which is a very, very bizarre and surreal feeling as a West Ham fan.
Absolutely, mate. Well, look, we're recording this podcast on the weekend of the Chelsea game on the Monday night, so we don't know what's happened against the Blues yet. West Ham are currently 9th in the league. I think with the win over Chelsea, we can go back up to 5th. If we win by enough of a margin, we could even go 4th, depending on the way other results go over this weekend. But we wrapped up the year, an excellent 2-1 win at Ellen Road before a 1-1 draw against Crystal Palace. And all in all, lads, there is a feeling of positivity around the club at the moment. I think it's fair to say that we hope David Moyes goes into the transfer market again in January. He did it expertly well in 2020 with Jared Bowen and Thomas Souček. We hope he does it again, because we do need cover in positions. I think a few more injuries and our form will start to suffer. But lads, it's been absolutely brilliant for me doing the podcast this year. I've enjoyed doing it, love doing it with both of you. It has been difficult, and I am looking forward to seeing you both in person and having a beer again as soon as possible and as soon as we can. Those end of season beers in May seem like a lifetime ago now. But before we wrap up the podcast, just quickly, I want a couple of awards from you. It might be putting you on the spot. I want your player of 2020 and of course your game of 2020 and your best moment or best game, whichever one you fancy. So Tom, I'll throw to you first. I'm pretty sure I know who your player of 2020 might be, but what have you got for us?
I might first span in the works, and Mikel Antonio, purely for his goals keeping us up and everything that went on with him at home and his father. I think it's Mikel Antonio for me.
Wow, I thought you were going to say Ben Rama, even though he's only played about 2 minutes for football so far. Jones, Tom goes Mikel Antonio there. Can't argue with that at all. Outstanding goals, just signed a new contract. Fair play to him. What have you got? Anyone different?
I mean, difficult to look past Antonio, but I think worthy shout outs to both Angelo Ogbonna and Thomas Souček. Both of them been absolutely superb for us, particularly the back end of this year, but even throughout. Ogbonna's been a rock this season. Souček's just been consistently good in midfield. So those two are worthy shout outs, but I think Antonio deserves it for me.
No Declan Rice from either of you.
Close.
Declan Rice, it's a given, isn't it, that he'll put a performance in, week out. You know, you expect it from him. He's that good.
So you think you two are saying, you saying Jonesy, that Mikel Antonio over Declan Rice for you, yeah?
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I think that's a little bit harsh of Rice there, because I think he's done it continuously. To be fair to Antonio, he did sort of only turn it on once football came back. So I think as far as all of 2020 goes, I am going to give it to Declan Rice. Broke into the England team as well. He's a West Ham captain now. If Mark Noble goes at the end of the season and Declan Rice stays around, he will be club captain. I think he's done an outstanding job for a man so young. And the England thing in particular is brilliant. He's got his first goal for England. He hasn't missed a minute of Premier League action for West Ham since the start of last season, which is just phenomenal. He's brilliant week in, week out, and absolutely love him. And an honourable mention to my favourite man, of course, King Arthur Masuaku. Back in that 5 at the back system under David Moyes is just brilliant. And Jonesy, moment of 2020, other than every single Tuesday night when you get to have a chat with your old mate Will Pugh.
Moment of 2020, it's got to be that Lanzini goal against Tottenham. Absolutely wonderful. I can't think of anything else that even gets anywhere near it, if I'm honest. Oh, actually, to be fair, we were leading at Anfield for what was it, 18 minutes back in January. No, was it? I can't remember what it was, but we were leading at Anfield for a while, which was a pretty good moment, even though we still lost that game. So yeah.
Happy days. Tom, moment of 2020 for you. Again, hard to look past the Manuel Lanzini at Tottenham.
Yeah, I think that is the moment of the year in probably football, to be honest. But for me, thinking personally, probably seeing Souček score live, seeing a West Ham player score live again was just bit of a surreal feeling. So I'll put that in there because it's something I wanted to see for so long. So to actually get the flash again was pretty special.
Even though no one in the stadium really knew whether to cheer or not because of VAR, wasn't it? But yeah, no, I'm with you. Manuel Lanzini, Tottenham away. Everyone loves putting Tottenham to the sword, and to get that last minute equaliser like that, just classic, absolutely classic from Tottenham. I love Manuel Lanzini, and if that's the last worthwhile, noteworthy thing he does in a West Ham shirt, then fair play to him. What a way to sign off if that is it. Jonesy, that is it. Before I wrap up for 2020, have you got any final thoughts for after a crazy, strange, difficult year for most, a roller coaster year as ever for West Ham, and a pretty decent one for the We Are West Ham podcast?
I mean, it's been a great year, and I think one thing we haven't mentioned yet, and it's worthy of a shout out, is thanks to Betway as well for helping us out for the 2020-21 season. Obviously they're supporting the podcast. They've given us all £50 a week to put on a bet for charity for our chosen charities. So they deserve a big thank you and a big shout out. But the podcast has gone from strength to strength. From where we were on the 1st of January this year to where we are now is probably not where we expected to be, but I think we're in a far better place. And really, really looking forward to seeing how far we can take the podcast, and obviously looking forward to seeing how far West Ham can go on the pitch. It's been a great year for the podcast. Not so much great year for normal life, but I think we've got lots to look forward to. And thanks to the listeners for sticking with us, even though we didn't really know whether we were coming or going back in March. So thank you, and here's to a good 2021.
Lovely stuff from you, Josie. Tom, any final thoughts before we wrap up the We Are West Ham podcast for the year?
But yeah, similar to Jonesy, it's been brilliant to get involved full time and to be a part of it. It's been something I've absolutely loved doing and very appreciative of. And one of, like I said earlier on in the show, one of my highlights of the year. And I can't wait to see what we get up with in this following year. We've done some amazing interviews and with some really, really club legends and some brilliant players, and we've had some hilarious insights from Craig Forrest to Martin and to everyone. We've had some brilliant chats, and long may that continue. And I can't wait to see what else we can get and what we've got up our sleeve, because fingers crossed 2021 we'll actually be able to get in the studio together at some point and have a beer afterwards and have a little bit of normality. And fingers crossed all the listeners have the same thing in the new year. And let's get on with it, and let's crack into 2021 now. I think 2020 has been done. It's been seen and done now, and let's get on with it.
Absolutely, mate. Well, it's good stuff on the pitch for West Ham. I would like to echo those sentiments. Just say thank you to all of our guests. We read their names out at the beginning of the podcast. But for me, a West Ham fan since I was sort of born, really, since I can really remember, running around the garden in my centenary West Ham shirt, the pony one, the 100-year anniversary one, 95, 96 with the collar, number 3, Dix on the back, smashing balls into the goal at the end of the garden, pretending I was Dixie. Being able to talk to some of the guys we have spoken to this season is it's a bit of a dream come true. It's regularly pinch yourself, and we balance this alongside our work as well. But talking to the guys, Tony Carr has been a stalwart for us this season. Massive thanks to Tony. The man's on first name terms and texting terms with Mark Noble, Trevor Brooking. He knew Bobby Moore, Frank Lampard, Joe Cole, all of these players, and he always takes the time out for the We Are West Ham podcast. He's totally respectful. Same goes to all the other guys. We've had Tony Cotty, Tony Gale, Dean Ashton came on. They were all brilliant. Martin Allen in recent times. We hope to keep those coming as the season rolls on and as next year rolls on. So thanks to all our guests. Thanks to the guys at LSR, the producers there, Love Sport Radio. Unfortunately, that's no more, but they really gave us the platform to start. So it's Merry Christmas from me. I hope you've had a good of one as you possibly could. Happy New Year from the We Are West Ham podcast. Stick with us. Keep the faith, up the hammers, and we'll see you next year.